Okay, good morning, everyone, and hello from very, very, very snowy Maynooth, where it's absolutely hammering down out here now, and so we've had to cancel lectures, so we apologise for the late notice for that. However, we have a lot to cover in this semester, so it's important that we keep going. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk through the slides for week 5. So what we're going to talk about today is assessing data. So we have one topic to finish off from last week where we talked about the different types of social data. So we want to talk about rich text. We're also going to talk a little bit about the need for a business intelligence competency centre, and we're going to talk about a process for accessing data. But as ever, first it's important that we just remind what we looked at last week, because these are the important topics that will probably form the basis for a question. When we think about what we recap on and what we talk about as the priorities for lecture. So we talked about the characteristics of social networks. We talked about relationships, how they're user based, they're interactive, they're community driven, and they're emotional. So this is the challenge where we have emotion is more important than content. So we talked about the different social data types. We talked about behavioural data around how people behave, sentiment data, how we feel. We talked about social graph data, so who knows who's connected to who can influence who. Locational geographic data, so where are our customers, where are they at any one time or at any particular time of the day. And then finally we were going to talk about rich media data that we didn't get a chance to finish last week. So we're going to finish that today before we go on to the topics. So today we'll finish that rich text stuff. We'll talk about the structuring of the Business Intelligence Competence Centre, why we need it. We're going to present a model for assessing social data, and we're going to talk about social platforms. So that will cover the entire week 5 stuff. These lectures are going to be in 15-minute blocks, so I'll go through all the content for week 5, because there's a possibility we won't have lectures on Friday as well. Okay, just before we do that, it's important to remember the groups are set. If you've got someone who's not participating in the assignment or not making contact with you, let me know now. It's an awful lot easier to fix this now than later. I would encourage students to use the Moodle form to ask questions, so that everybody gets the benefit of a good question. And all questions are good questions, because if you don't understand it, the rest of the class won't either. Okay, so just, what we're going to very quickly look at is, just give a little recap on some of the issues around assignments, because this is quite important. First, biggest failure is to underestimate how much work a third year, final year group project that's worth a lot of marks actually should take. If there's 40% or 30% of the marks going for a module that requires 120 hours of work, you can do the maths to realise how much time you need to spend on that one, and shortcutting time spent on that and thinking, oh well, it's a group work, so I only need to do a quarter or a fifth of the work. It doesn't really work. It shows. Next thing to do is really, really, really think about how you're actually answering the question that's being asked. If you want to get maximum marks, or you want to be marked at a maximum marks, you need to answer the question that's been asked. So, don't go off on round circles. If we're talking about business intelligence, if we're talking about social data analytics, I'm not interested in surveys of 20 people or whatever. We're looking at, big social data sets. We're looking about using data analysis to make data-driven decisions. This is a real pet hate of mine. Is that if people are giving a presentation and they don't turn up for other people's presentations, then they rock up and make the same mistakes over and over again. They're not prepared for things. It's discourteous towards your fellow students to not turn up, but it's also missing out on a learning outcome. People have put a lot of effort into researching a topic, and you can learn a lot from how other people present. So, what your presentation needs to be, it needs to be professional. When you're up on that stage presenting or at the front of the class, look like you want to be there. Person hanging off the end with their coat on, ready to run out the door, looks bad. You're dragging down the marks for everyone, because you're creating an impression that it's not serious. You need to be unique and original. If you can there's a broad scope of approaches you can take on this. And if you come up with something that's different, that's original, that's creative, that's ambitious, you know, you will get rewarded for it. It's better to aim high and kind of come a little bit short than aim low and just be mediocre. Evidence of additional reading, additional theories. There's lots of theory in this course, but you know, you are doing other modules. You can bring in other things. You can show evidence that you've read around the course. That's valuable. The integration of concepts is critical. So the biggest problem I find when I'm grading group work is this a complete failure for the different concepts to be integrated. Or we present a theory of business analytics or some form of model, and we don't actually operationalize it for, you know, for what we're looking at. So the strategy canvas is presented, but it's not actually what specific elements of it mean for your problem are presented, and that's a real weakness. So all presentations should finish with some form of conclusion, a summary that is actually justified by the analysis. It can't be a non sequitur. It can't be something that, you know, just is pulled out of nowhere. And this is why it's important that you work together on your assignment, so each part builds into the next. One of the things that I'm really always keen on in assignments is that you provide a means by which success can be determined. If you say, we're going to, you know, build such and such a product, how many units is it going to ship? How many customers are you going to have? How many subscribers are you going to have? You know, how will you know if this is working? Because one of the real things, especially if we're taking a lean approach, is that you want to be able to pull the plug on it if it's not working as quickly as possible. So you need metrics. So check out whatever's up on Moodle, you know, and really put effort into this. And don't be afraid to ask questions, either in class, on Moodle, or drop me an email if you're concerned about things. Okay, so, you know, 7 minutes later, we actually get to start on some content. So the last form of social data that we were going to talk about last week was rich media data. So this is things like video, audio, photographic content that's produced and shared. So if you think just Instagram alone, these kind of millions or billions of photographs are being shared. And like obviously a photograph is much harder to identify what the meaning of is than a piece of text. So you've got all sorts of useful data, who created it, you know, what their profile is, what's the title, is there an abstract, is there a summary, are there keywords, is there location data in it? So a lot of times, you know, with photographs, the actual GPS coordinates of where the photograph was taken is included. What kind of camera was it taken on? Who took it? You know, and are there comments underneath it? Like, you know, does it invoke happy sentiment in people? Does it create anger? Whatever. You know, if there's a picture of an elderly patient on a shopping trolley, on a hospital trolley in a waiting area, just imagine the sentiment, the comments underneath, the outrage and the anger. And that's telling us, you know, a huge amount of information about how people feel about a service. So we need some kind of a feature extraction so we can actually recognize patterns. And a lot of times with the video, we'll actually convert it to audio and text and then analyze it. So, you know, with images, static pictures, we can use feature extraction algorithms and techniques. So we can have facial recognition software where we identify people in it. You know, we identify where they are in it. So there's a guy in UCD, and he actually studies goalkeepers, and he's trying to identify, you know, patterns in what way they're going to move, how many saves they make, whatever. So this has, you know, lag information value in that, you know, we can provide statistics afterwards and say the keeper made X number of saves. But if you're a coach and the other team, you're interested in what are the patterns, what are the behaviours of that person. So you can actually extract that information and tell your strikers, if he goes to the right, he's actually going to dive to the left, that sort of information. So, you know, we're going to extract critical pieces of image data and run a statistical analysis. So basically, it's a relatively limited exercise at the moment. And, you know, you could say it's not applied in daily analysis yet, but actually that's probably out of date at this stage. So one of the students came up after class last week and showed how she'd sent somebody a message that was just a photograph, and straight away the person who received the photograph was getting ads that were based on the content of the photograph. So Facebook was able to analyze that photograph and tailor the advertisements to meet it. So that's an example of rich data feature extraction. So with videos and audio, we convert the speech to text, and then we can perform simple text analysis. So with video, it's a little more complex because we have to extract the text, and then with its metadata, and then we have to actually match it to the pictures. So sorry, that first sub bullet point should actually not first the video is extracted. Not first the audio is extracted, but first the video is extracted. So we can convert that into pictures, and then we process the audio, but we have to match them as well. So what do? We need to acquire it and tag it with the important metadata. So this metadata is data about data. When was the photograph taken? Who took it? What location was it at? So then we classify the data. So we put it into the pots, into groups of categories that we already have. So collect all the metadata, store it, apply some kind of techniques to it, and then we have an output. We've now converted our video into a set of different categories of data, and we can perform some kind of analysis on it. So this is much more difficult, it's much more limited because of the complexity involved in things like video. So if you take something like a social restaurant review site, where members have photographs, locations, sentiment data, ratings, food service, and whatever, a lot of restaurants will actually ignore the content classified as rich media text because it's rich media data because it's actually hard to make sense of. So as a result of it, if they just focus on the text, they can miss out a lot of stuff. So a picture of a small plate of food, a little nouveau cuisine with a little tiny piece of beef in the middle and two potatoes on the side, and a picture, wow, look at the size of these portions, might completely miss the context of the review. So that's, the other limitation comes down from it. There's the great Bill Murray telling you how awesome he thinks you are when he actually thinks you're a jerk. So one real difficulty of this sort of thing is if you perform the text extraction on that, you completely miss the challenge. So things like sarcasm, cynicism, humour, again, some of the challenges around text analysis are there for video analysis, but at a much higher level. Okay, so we're gonna stop there, and we're gonna start the next section will be chapter 6 from the Krishnan book, which will also be uploaded now.